the valley, kind of. You know? Like right between San Jose and Resource is where I'm at, which is
cute. Good.
Perfect. I love it.
I like it out there too.
I got blessed. Grandpa sold me Grandma and Grandpa's.
If you do that, I'll put you on the dino list.
Oh yeah, or I wouldn't have been able to afford one at that time.
I understand.
A guest?
If it says free and
What's that?
I'm just gonna make myself an offer.
Anybody like water flavoring? Walmart has this Jolly Rancher green apples. That's sugar free. It's like it's addictive. They're really good though. But sugar free, so I cling to those things that I can have now.
I had thought about this. Who actually kicks this off? But it's my job to convene this meeting, so maybe
you're convening.
I can do that. So we can start it rolling. And you all are on live YouTube for the community to see. So I'm the county council administrator, as you all know, and state code requires that the executive do the convening, and it's sometimes confusing as to who the executive is. Obviously, the county council delegates a lot of their executive powers to me through my job description. So anyway, they allowed me to do this, to convene you all, and so congratulations once again for being here, and thank you again. So I'll turn it over to agenda item A, nominations and election of the study committee chair. Any one of you all can make a nomination.
Before we get into nominations, if I may, I'd like to say a couple of words. So I've given it a lot of thought. I'd be happy to have any of us serve as chair. I think it's a great group. I have confidence in everybody's abilities. However, I do want to say this about the role of a chair. It's really important to me that the chair be an honest broker. And what that means to me is that the chair not use his or her position to put a finger on the scale. I see Judy nodding because I was burned on the county council. I bet you were too. The rules, for instance, said any council member could put an agenda item on the agenda, and sometimes if the chair didn't like the item, they wouldn't do it. Now I know that I believe the chair should have every right to speak up and have a strong opinion, but I just would like anybody who's nominated to assure us that they will be an honest broker. The chair's job is to help the group move toward decisions, and that should be done even-handedly and fairly. Again, the chair can have strong opinions and advocate for them. They just can't use their role as chair to fix the deal. So with that, I'll shut up.
I would certainly concur with that. If I could, I'd ask one question. Who on this group of the 7 of us is interested in being chair, has the time and enthusiasm to be the chair? I think that's before we nominate people. If you don't have issues, so
I'm not interested in it. I'm not interested in the chair.
I probably can, because if we'd have started 3 months ago like we thought we were going to, I would have had a clear deck. We've got 5 or 6 weeks of booked stuff that I can't get out of.
Ladies and gentlemen, please talk into your mics.
And to be the chair and not be here would be not okay. Jeremy?
I'm good with not being the chair. I think me and Bob, we get that. I mean, we're kind of both representatives of, you know, I'm the GOP representative. Bob's the Democratic representative. I personally would like to see, you know, someone who's maybe one of the unaffiliated, preferably. But I think that would be fair. I would nominate Steven in a heartbeat if Steven's open to that.
Let's go around and see who's.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just say,
Cricket?
not interested.
Why?
And
Or Marcy.
I'm in the same position that Walt is. I've got I got grandkids in Africa and a brother getting married in Seattle, and I've got a heavy schedule of travel this summer, so I don't think adding the chair to it would be a good idea. And also, I don't know if I agree with you, Jeremy. I'd be happy to have you as chair. Frankly, you're
No,
a
I just think
you're a debater by training. got the
that is
skills.
true.
And as long as whoever it is willing to commit to be a fair broker, I'm happy with any of this.
I'd reiterate that Steven's a professional.
I think he'd be
So, I don't
fine.
know.
But he's a working stiff. I don't know if
He
he wants to
is.
take it
I'll go
on.
with that.
No. You want to be chair?
I don't particularly want to be chair. I wouldn't
Would you?
say absolutely not. I also have some plans, some weeks kind of plotted out in the next
We all
couple
do.
months with a new grandbaby that I've made commitments to. But, yeah. And I don't have really any experience.
Steve, you kind of ducked your turn.
Well, I'm just, I want to give everybody the opportunity. I'd be willing to do it. I probably have the same amount of obligations that you guys have. I don't have a dog in the fight in the sense that I like to see things move along and progress. I haven't been a chair on any other boards. This is my first rodeo in that sense. So,
Do you have the time to do it? Okay.
I can make time.
I'll nominate Mr. Stocks as
I,
chair.
I would
second
second
it.
that.
I thought you kind of did it.
I don't mind. Well, that was the unofficial discussion, but I would second that.
So a vote?
All in favor? You're on, Stephen, now you gotta do it.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Hey, Cricket.
So,
Hot potato.
So what a power-hungry group we have here.
Right?
so first and foremost, I don't know if we have to do an official roll call. Is that essential here? How about we go around, everybody introduces ourselves. We'll start with Ms. Carmichael.
We call me Mrs. Carmichael? That's
Who's
tough.
that?
Okay, I'm Judy Carmichael, and I'm retired, and I'm perfectly willing to put what we're gonna be doing on a calendar so that so Stephen can figure out when we can meet, so, because we need to be as many of us at the meetings as we can get.
If you're Ms. Carmichael, I'm Grandpa Walt.
Microphone, Walt.
Listen, I'm Walt Dabney. I'm also retired, and that's about it. I live on the east side with Cricket and Bob and
Stephen.
And Steve.
inside joke.
Oh, no, I get it. Jeremy Day, just happy to be here, happy to see this process moving forward.
Cricket Green, absolutely east side, born and raised there. Looking forward to being a part of it. Really important.
Bob Greenberg, the vice chair of the County Democratic Party. When I saw who was appointed to this group, I was very excited. I think this is going to be fun. There's a lot of talent and experience here. I look forward to it, although I think we have an enormous job. And I am a little concerned about the average age of this group. Steve and Jeremy are the only kids.
I'll take that as a
You
compliment.
should. Well, you're my daughter's age.
Right. We
So
won't
I think-
date that, though.
So I think we need to find ways to reach out to people who are just beginning to live in Moab because they're younger than we are.
My name's Steven Stocks. From here, family's been here from forever. I look forward to making the process move forward efficiently and from there.
I'm Marcy Till, and I share Cricket's enthusiasm for undertaking this project. And I think it is a really excellent opportunity to show our citizens how effective and efficient a diverse group can be.
One other question, would it be essential to appoint someone to do record keeping of minutes as a secretary for the group? Does anyone have any motions, or it has to be one of us? Anybody like to do that position, to volunteer to take minutes for the group, record keeping for the group?
I nominate somebody retired.
I'll do it.
Marcy will do it.
Do I have a second on the
I would
nomination?
second Marcy.
Yeah, me too.
All in favor?
Point,
Yes.
I'm not sure that it has to be a member of the study committee. I think that's a function we ought to hire or ask for the county support for. Anyway, but I'm happy to,
Let's ask Ruth what that looks like. I mean, it would,
Taking minutes.
some, yeah.
It's taking notes during, it's getting them, I guess, to my office so that I can get them posted once you all approve them. I mean, our process would be to follow the Open Public Meetings Act to get them posted.
the problem with having a member take minutes is that it distracts you from participating.
Yeah, that's
Well, I
what,
think it takes Marcy out of the mix, really.
yeah.
agree.
It makes her,
What the question was that Bob was asking is if there's someone on staff that could do that during these meetings.
Certainly. I actually do intend to come to at each and every meeting. My position, however, is very precarious with this whole form of government change, and so it's awkward for me in that light. So otherwise,
Do you have a
it's just we're stretched thin, but certainly we can do that, and part of what we are mandated by state code to do is to support you all, so we will do what's needed. And I think the way to do it would be to have, so you didn't quite get to the vote yet, but if you did vote Marcy in, Marcy could then delegate to staff, and then you all could vote on that. I mean, you could do it that way. We have seen that on boards.
If you have, is it Tara that's part-time?
Yes.
Is there any way that we could use some of the money that's been put in here to maybe buy some time of someone like Tara to extend her hours or whatever, instead
Certainly,
of going
that-
out and getting somebody new?
The $10,000, I believe the way state code is written, is really intended for you all to have independent legal counsel and other professional consultants. So
Oh,
I don't think that would really apply to that. She is part-time and her hours are not going to necessarily meet with your hours. So
okay.
I will say I am willing. I do tend to take notes anyway. I've already taken some. I'm willing and I am going to be attending, but if it's awkward for you guys, the fact that my position is kind of up in the air, then I want you all to feel comfortable. But I'm comfortable doing it. I'm willing.
That'd be great.
Do we have a motion?
So do we need to vote Marcy in, or
We need to take care of that motion first. So do we want to retract that motion? Have Marcy do it, or do we want to?
Ruth, if you could?
I retract that motion. I think Marcy's best attention would be on the subject at hand. Personally, I do think it would be a major distraction to be able to take notes and still, I mean, maintain a buy-in, if you want to put it that way. So I would say we retract the motion for Marcy, and then we make a new motion.
Let me just point out, though, that a secretary is an officer of the board, and it should be someone on the board.
Okay.
So my point was, you all could still
Have a
appoint-
secretary, but we just delegate.
And then the board takes that position and delegates it to staff.
Okay.
That way it's cleaner, because it does need to be a board member.
Put your
Okay.
motion back on the.
So I rescind my rescind.
Do we have a second on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the motion, as I understand it, is to
See, already I can't
Right.
keep track, so.
appoint Marcy Till as the secretary. Let's have a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
then I'll work with staff.
Do we have a motion to allow her to delegate those responsibilities to?
I will make a motion to allow Marcy to delegate responsibilities to staff as she deems fit.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Can I make a friendly amendment? Can we direct her to?
Yeah, we could direct her. That's
delegate?
too. Yeah, direct her to delegate.
Okay. Do we want to have discussion on that, or would we like to vote? Okay, vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Unanimous
7-0.
now.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
do we need a vice chair if you're not gonna be here? It would seem we would need somebody to take over if you're in court or something and can't get out.
We could elect a chairman pro tem if that happened also. I mean, there are two ways that.
I would wait chairman pro tem if you can't make it. That way it's not, yeah, just in case. I like that idea, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like that idea. And we can still have a meeting. Yeah, I
So
like
that
the
would
idea
be
of
our
chairman pro
procedure,
tem.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a procedure at the first of the meeting.
Well, maybe we ought to formalize that. So
We have a motion?
I don't know that you have to. I think Robert's rules.
It allows for it.
Allows for that.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it
Okay.
if your chair isn't there and you don't have a vice chair.
Enough.
Do we have any other housekeeping matters that you'd like to talk about? I don't see any besides moving to the next section, which would be citizens fever.
So who is taking your minutes today would be my question.
You.
Would you please take a minute today?
Is that an official delegation for all your meetings?
For all the meetings that you were able to attend?
Okay.
And if you're not, then we'll converse and come up with plan B.
Okay.
And whatever I'm doing, I'm kind of doing for my own personal edification.
Yes.
Quick question also, did you say, Ruth, that this is going to be recorded as well?
It is being
Okay, so if there were ever any question, we've got a backup that we can go with. So, okay, thank you.
Any other housekeeping matters before we move to citizens to be heard?
Mr. Chairman, can we limit each presentation to 3 minutes?
Yes. Okay. When you come up to, will you please state your name and then
Barbara,
take the
my
time
name
that
is
you need.
Barbara Higgs, and I would just like to ask each of you to speak into your microphone. Cricket, we can barely hear you, honey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Exactly.
My name is Mark Horowitz, and I must say, given how contentious it's been kind of getting to this point, I'm extremely relieved and gratified to see that you all get along so nicely. I'm very pleased that the meetings are on YouTube, and to the point just made, I'm going to ask also that you speak into these microphones. You can almost whisper if you get close enough. And if you don't, you simply can't be heard out here. So you're speaking to us as well as people on YouTube, so I'm asking you use those microphones. Lastly, I want to say I find it interesting that not on today's agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Normally, when the pledge is rattled off, I leave the room because I don't sense the feeling that people are really pledging allegiance to a nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all, but I'm asking that we do that here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Any other citizens to be heard? Seeing none, we will move on to.
I make a motion
Yeah.
Motion, yes.
that we say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll second it.
Second.
Well,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
At this time, we're moving on to presentations. Seeing none, we'll move on to general business, establishing and approving a schedule of meetings.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Several of us have mentioned that we already have other commitments for the next several months. Can I suggest that we each submit our schedules to Ruth and give her the difficult task of trying to find meeting dates for us on a roughly, for the next 3 months, every other week basis?
Should we be forwarding those to Ms. Till to forward on to whoever she delegates to handling those issues?
Or just give them directly to Ruth unless Marcy wants them to come through her.
How about you?
Judy, didn't you volunteer?
No. It'd really be handy to have everybody's schedule on one
On a master calendar.
a
Yep.
master calendar. So
Ruth,
that
would you be
have-
willing to work on that?
Absolutely.
Well, plus
Okay.
it would help because then Ruth knows if the
Absolutely.
chamber's already booked more than as much.
So then I'll make a motion to postpone this item until our next meeting.
But we should decide on our next.
We should
meeting.
decide when that is, and I guess I can include that in the motion. I move that our next meeting be scheduled 2 weeks from today, Friday, March 22 at noon.
One question before we vote on that.
You second.
I'd really like Christina to be here to go over the legal stuff, so we need to use this calendar and find out through Ruth maybe if all of us and the county attorney can be here.
So
I
let
would
me
second that.
let me say
choice.
tentatively schedule it
Okay.
for Friday, the 22nd, subject to the county attorney's availability.
Do we have any discussion on that motion?
Just Friday is usually the county attorney's free day.
Does anyone know of any conflicts at this point that would prohibit them from being able to attend that meeting
On the 22nd?
on the 22nd?
We have something at 1:45, but do we always need to meet at noon?
Not necessarily. We could select the time that we would like to meet,
Yeah, okay.
subject to the availability of this room.
Because it's better for me early afternoon because I have tours that I have to do in the evening. So noon, 1, whatever. If 12:30 or 1's better, so people can grab lunch before.
Excuse me, but,
We're just talking about one meeting, huh?
Mr. Chair, it turns out we have a board retreat for tribal council in this room all day on March 22nd. Seems
We
like
don't
it
always,
worked out
and we
really
don't
great.
always, I mean, I know for the YouTube, we like to have it here, but we could
Could we do it the 21st?
potentially also set it up at another venue.
21st is not available in
Yeah.
here. Wednesday is the 20th.
Do you think we could find out if the Grand Center's available?
Well, then you lose all of this YouTube and all
That's
the
true.
microphones, and it's echoey. There's issues, but I can certainly find out.
Or we can use the library's big room if
Yeah.
it's available. Or, in our neighborhood, the Beershide Building has a great meeting room downstairs. Or Zion's
So
Bank.
what
Yep,
are you
Zion's
looking at
too.
that might have availability?
This is the reservation, calendar for this room. So next Friday, the 15th, is wide open all day. If
Why not
if you're
do
looking
that?
for Friday.
Okay, I'll amend my motion since it hasn't been seconded yet to noon, or how about till 1 o'clock on the 15th?
Noon's fine.
Noon's fine?
If
Okay.
it's
Till
okay
noon
with
on
everybody
the
else.
15th here at the council chambers.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All in favor of having our next meeting Friday, March 15th at noon? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you for trying to
I'd
work
like,
with me.
for continuity, I'd like for us to have the meetings in a place where people are comfortable coming and going from their lunch hour and knowing where we're gonna be, rather than running all over the valley to different locations. Because if I called and said, we're having a meeting, these guys could assume it was gonna be here. And I think that's gonna be better if we can manage to do that.
And if we can manage to, I know we have a lot going on, but figure out what day and have it set, kind of like all the other meetings, so you can just kind of know without pulling out your calendar that it's going to be this Wednesday or whatever. It just makes it easier. And it also makes it easier for the public to know, okay, that's the date they meet.
So I think the likelihood that one of us might not be able to attend is highly.
It's inevitable.
On a given meeting.
And so I don't know what we would need to do to allow for like an electronic attendance. Via phone or, I don't know, if
Huh?
there's FaceTime or something
Chair
like that.
recognizes Mr. Greenberg.
I reviewed Utah Code 524202, which is the Open Meetings Act, and it appears that a resolution is required to allow for remote participation. And I think I copied everyone my request to Chrissy Sloan to look at whether or not we need a separate resolution, and if we do, to draft it for our next meeting. So I think that's what is required, unless she tells us different, because the county has such a resolution. I think that just authorizes us to adopt one ourselves. And I just don't want to lose sight of the part of my motion that we just voted on was to table the scheduling until our next meeting. And I do want to say, I agree with you. If we can find a regular date, that'd be great. But I'm guessing that we might have to kind of catch as catch can for the next 2 or 3 months.
Not a problem.
Before we can get in front of our calendars to do that. But we'll see. We'll give our schedules to Ruth and.
Please do.
Thank you. Yes, a resolution would be in order. Another way would be if you all decide to adopt bylaws, that would be another way to have the electronic meetings in bylaws. Not necessary, but it's got to be in one or the other, is my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer. But I have dealt with a lot of boards over the years. So I wanted you to know that. And I wanted you all to also know that Fridays are almost all wide open, except the next Friday, the 22nd. So if you're going to be looking at that.
There's also the question of quorum.
What was it? What'd you
The question of quorum, how many individuals we need here to be able to carry on the meetings.
Four, that's.
A majority of the members.
It's 4.
It depends if we
That's
vote.
where bylaws come in, because
Yeah.
it could be 4 or it could be a simple majority. With
be
the county
2/3.
council, it has to be 4, period, but it's not true with the housing authority board, for example, with the same number of people, so.
Well, 4 is a simple majority here.
But I mean, you could have 4 here, and then 3 would be a simple majority. So in other words, bylaws is where you get all of this really clarified.
Yes.
Yeah, quorum is 4 of the 7 of us, but if it's a simple majority, you have 3 of us can show up and then a quorum could be 2, that it could be voted 2 to.
So if we have quorum, what we're saying is, if we have quorum, we can vote on things. And at that point, 3 people could rule on something out of the 7 because we have quorum of 4. That makes sense.
Quorum is a quorum.
Yes. So the next question would be whether or not we want to create bylaws that kind of detail everything like that out. And that might be something we would want to table until our next meeting to be able to establish those as well.
That would require somebody to draft them in the next week. And it's not going to be me.
Don't we have bylaws for the county council that exist right now that says a quorum is 4, and don't we have something kind of rudimentary?
We have all kinds of boards, commissions, committees, and bylaws galore. So we have templates, yes.
Yes, I was going to say, we
Yeah.
could just take out the word planning commission or county council and just replace it, and they'd be written for us already, more or less.
Just someone has to do that.
So
Find and replace, give me word, I can do it.
is that
I mean, we
something
could-
staff?
What'd you say, Chris?
Well-
I said, give me a Word document, or just find and replace, and she just replace it.
She's got,
I think Cricket just volunteered.
I
think
just
Cricket
said, all you gotta do
volunteered.
is take a Word document and say find and replace, and everywhere where it says county council, you replace it with study committee, and
Okay.
it just,
Ruth just indicated that staff could do that too.
awesome,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
I mean,
Let's
it's not a bad
have
idea to
staff
say,
do it.
pull up some of those templates that we do have and to give us some options and say, okay, what do we want to do there?
Give us
know?
a couple options, yeah, absolutely.
Couple that fit this group.
Yep.
Make-
Go on.
Notice is legally required because we have to post. So I think that the critical issues are quorum and the number of votes needed to pass a motion. I'm sure there are others too, but those are, I think, what I'm hearing is those are the critical ones. So beyond that, I'm not sure what we need, but it has to at least address those 2 issues.
Well, in electronic or whatever,
Electronic participation. Again, I asked Chrissy.
But I
has
mean,
to
that
a
would be
separate
part of that.
resolution. Well, it could be in the bylaws.
The bylaws.
because that's what we have in the planning commission.
We would like to add that as an agenda matter for next week.
Bylaws, adoption of.
I think that's a great idea. Does somebody
that-
want to make a motion? I'll make a motion to add bylaws to the agenda item for next week.
That include at least those 3 salient issues.
So if I can just
Please.
clarify.
Please.
If it's not an action item on your current agenda, you don't make a motion. You only make a motion if it's under action. So, but you can certainly state.
Yeah, let's
Well,
Let's
it's
just
on.
add
let's
that
do
to the
that.
next
Let's
agenda.
add that to the next
It's
agenda.
on, it's
Bylaws.
on as discussion of adopting.
Mm-hmm, it is. So the idea of electronic attendance, question about what's, constitutes a quorum.
Yep.
How
What was
many,
the third one?
how many votes needed to pass a motion? So that you don't have the situation where 4 people show up, so you have a legal meeting, but then you can pass things with only 3 votes.
Right.
The council doesn't allow that, for instance.
So the next item on the agenda, it will be discussion items to make sure that we're meeting the first meeting mandates for the study committee, and that's contained in Utah Code section 17-52A-402. We need to make sure that we meet all those requirements.
This council is our first.
This is our meeting, yes, we're making sure that we meet.
All it calls for is electing a chair. We're doing that.
Excellent.
Good.
Oh, we're ahead of the game now, right?
Moving on to the next item then would be the review of the general mandates for the study committee, Utah Code section 17-52A-403, parenthetical 3, parenthetical A.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think all of us have gone in and underlined, but it looks like it's really straightforward. We're responsible for recommending within 1 year of this date a allowed form of government that's clearly more responsive or accountable to the people, or significantly improved in the interest of economy and efficiency, and that we're required to hold hearings and forums in order to do that, and that it does seem to suggest in the end of B that we could recommend more than one plan, and I think we probably ought to ask the county attorney about that. It's a little bit confusing. And then we are required to complete, I expect we'll delegate, a complete and detailed draft, including all necessary implementing provisions, which sounds like lawyer stuff to me. And here's the, then we may conduct additional hearings after we file our report, and then make small tweaks. Now, there's one other thing embedded in here that kind of surprised me, is that we're also authorized to look at other elected officials. And I don't know if we want to kind of integrate that into our work or see if we have time at the end of our other work to do this, but it's in there.
Mr. Dabney?
Yeah, and I agree with Bob. I'd like to know exactly what that means from the county attorney, because I can't imagine I don't know what to imagine, that we're supposed to go look at the other offices, especially elected offices around here as part of this. And I really think it would be important for us to understand that. It also says some other things that when it says we need to look at the legislative and judicial proceedings underway and see whether they should be stopped. What does that mean?
That's pending stuff.
Yeah, pending stuff. So I need to understand, what does that mean? It also says, and I invite all of you to go look at this, what is, it refers
Where
to
are you,
chapter,
Walt?
let me pull it up. I'm on my notes, but I'll pull it up here. If you go to 17-52A-405, plan may propose changing forms of county government. And you go down to 2, you need to go read that and see what that's talking about. That talks about 4 other forms of government that are on the books right now that would really open up some serious discussions in this county. And it says very clearly that that's something this group can look at. It's on page 15 if you have the law, down on 17-52A-405. Plan may propose changing forms of county government. Plan may propose change of structural form. And 35B Part 3 is something that I'd really like to ask the county attorney, what does that mean as it relates to this working? So is it really saying we're going to look at the sheriff's office and?
It says we may.
Well, I know, but what is expected in this group? I'd like to really understand what that means, and then we can decide what we're going to look at, maybe, and what we're not going to look at, what we want to talk to the public about.
Well, I think from my perspective, it's where are we at, where are we here. We look at the things that make us not in code with the state, and that's why we're here. Our sheriff's department is completely within code. So I think we could get into the weeds if we want to, but I don't know if that's necessary.
I don't particularly. Whoops, sorry.
No.
I don't particularly want to get into the weeds, but for the sake of discussion, if you get rid of partisan elections, you get rid of recall, and you get rid of term limits, are we in compliance right now? We are.
One point of clarification.
I'd like to have the county attorney here to talk all this stuff through. Yes, go ahead.
And one point of clarification, we do have an amount of money that it's budgeted for us to seek outside legal counsel. And the reason why I mention this is because it may be important to have independent counsel that has a different scheduling than what the county attorney, Ms. Sloan, has. That's something that we need to think about and discuss as well, because we don't want to tie our schedule based on the county attorney's schedule. And we can make that decision to do that, but that is funds that are allocated to us to seek outside legal counsel if we have questions like this, as opposed to approaching them then, allowing them to have more time to review the questions that we have and produce written documents that will show us their legal opinion based on that, as opposed to waiting for the attendance of County Attorney Sloan and having a barrage of questions.
I think we can just decide that. I'm not for spending money we don't have to, and I'd like for the county attorney to be intimately involved to the point that he or she knows, she in this case, knows what's going on. And
Chair recognizes, are you finished?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Chair recognizes Mr. Greenberg.
Can I suggest that we put on our next meeting agenda as a discussion item, engagement of study committee council. I don't think we'll need to take action then, but at least we can start to talk about it as an official agenda item.
There may be state people that are involved in this kind of thing that will work for no money, that under an obligation to come and help us.
The Lieutenant Governor's
Yeah,
office.
all of those kind of people, and they're already experts. We don't have to buy them.
Yeah, and we're specifically authorized to request help from the state or other government entities, so I think you're right on.
Mr. Dabney?
Is 10,000 what we have right now to support us? Is that that's a fixed amount?
Well, it's fixed in terms of what's in the budget for 2019
Okay.
calendar year. If something was needed more, it would be a request to county council, and they'd have to find the money if they wanted to support that.
Because some of us in the appointment council were talking about the fact it'd be great for all or a bunch of us to go up and visit with some of these other counties, see what's working for them and not. So we can burn up some money there, and it doesn't take long for outside counsel to go through $10,000 real quick, Jeremy. And
Let's cross that bridge.
Yeah.
It's
fiscally responsible.
It's definitely an option, but it's something we can need to discuss at our next meeting.
Right.
So looking at agenda item E, we've addressed the general ideas. That puts the deadline date for us would be March 8th, 2020, with my understanding, 1 year from today's date. Yep. Any other discussion on item E? Finding none, we'll move to item F, discussion and possible action on study strategy turn it over to committee member Greenberg.
By the way, it's B-E-R-G. Ruth knows. I got obsessive yesterday afternoon, as you will notice, and put together a spreadsheet which I sent you all of the vast number of permutations that we could consider. Again, if you look at our mandate as to how we consider them, it's about inclusiveness and efficiency. Those are the only two criteria. So I think we can narrow this down. And I think it's also probably appropriate to ask the county clerk and maybe some experts as to what is the possible number of districts, if we're going to look at some of these possibilities which involve districts. But I want to say, I think we've got to be a little bit disciplined. It seems to me there are four kinds of information we need to consider. As Walt suggested, we need to probably go look at some counties that are trying to make some of these work and talk to not just the county council or commission there, but other people to see what they think. Hopefully people across the spectrum, and I think Jeremy and I can help find people across the spectrum.
Definitely.
So that's one kind of information, kind of first-hand experience with these things. The second I would like to see us use is kind of academic research-oriented information. I know when the state was looking at authorizing mail-in ballots, for instance, they commissioned a study by two BYU guys. I'm sure there are people at BYU or Utah State or the University of Utah who have made their life's work looking at how different forms of government impact inclusiveness. And I think we ought to try and reach out to expert opinion as well. The third kind of information, obviously, is what people in Grand County think. And we're required to have public forums and hearings, so I think that's really important. And we have to figure out kind of at what stages those are going to be most useful. And the fourth, of course, is our own ideas and prejudices and experience. So what I would like to see is us continue to think about how we're going to go about it, how we're going to get at least those kinds of information, and probably I'll think of other ways to get information about this that we ought to also include. But I would like to continue this item on next agenda as well, and perhaps make it a standing item for at least the first couple of months as we figure out what the heck, how we're going to study this.
I do think that it is that the process as it unfolds will kind of direct us in the directions that we want to go, and so just kind of constantly revisiting that with what's our broad outline, and do we have a kind of an overall strategy or plan for how to move forward. And I think at some point, certainly not today, we actually tie that to some dates and deadlines so that we are making progress in a calculated way.
Mr. Dabney?
What'll be interesting, we can amongst us say these are the parameters we intend to look at. But when the folks out there say, are you going to consider this and that and the other, that's a factor we have to take into pretty serious consideration, because it's not just what, obviously, and I know you know that, what we think. It's hopefully with lots of public involvement, it's what people of this county think and want us to consider and tell us all about. That's why I am so supportive of big public involvement in this thing, and not only what do you think, but why do you think that would be better for us? Anyway, so we can kind of start out. I think what Marcy said is right. It will evolve, and it won't just evolve because of our deliberations. It'll evolve because the public's asking us some things that they think are important, or suggesting some things they think are important for us to put on the table.
Chair recognizes.
I'd like us to have some kind of a forum to where all of us can, the public and all of us can get up to speed as to what the 4 options are in the first place, so that everybody has an understanding of that in some kind of a forum. Then we can all learn together what the options are. But public hearings, I don't know, I've attended a lot of public hearings. I've heard really brilliant stuff from the public on more than one occasion. So I don't want to go into anything preconceived on anything except let's get us all up to speed at one time and make this a process where the public feels comfortable too.
Marcy?
I don't know what mechanism the county has for routine kind of press releases, but I think that the more we can keep the community up to date with what we're doing and how we're moving forward and how we're committed to inclusiveness, I think the better. And I hope we can direct somebody to do that, or I just think that's important. I do think that people are reading the papers.
Chair recognizes Ms. Dillon.
Thank you. One thought I had on that would be for our county council meetings, we could have one of you, the chair or whomever, have a standing item to report to the county council and therefore the public. And that would be occurring every 2 weeks. That's a little different than a press release, but the press is always at our county council meetings. So I think that would be a good way to get the information going.
See, I told you in public meetings you sometimes get brilliant.
Chair recognizes Mr. Day.
I like the idea that we've alluded to as workshops on different types of county government. We could have somebody come down and give a workshop on that to the public. And then also maybe a follow-up to that workshop at some point would be a town hall, where the public gets to put their input. And that I personally I envision like Star Hall, not just this office, but someplace that we can pack. Because I think this involves the community, and I think between me, Bob, and everybody in here, we can rally the troops and we can get people engaged, and that's going to be a big part of it. For me, it's all about the community being engaged, and that's huge. So loving these ideas.
Just separating out 2 ideas that we've mentioned, we've got the idea of a progress report, and we've heard from Marcy as well as Ms. Dillon that we can either have a drafted progress report or an update. We could have the chair report to the county council. We've got a number of options. Do we want to kind of boil that down to something? Mr. Day.
I'm just going to be candid on this one. I think for the chair, for one of us to go and report to the county council is kind of a weird dynamic. And I'm just going to say it this way because the county council in its current form is the current form of government. So for one of us to go and answer to them, it's awkward. It could potentially be awkward if we start to move in a direction where people, So, but I think definitely a draft where we have a progress report in writing, and that Ruth has the opportunity to say, hey guys, here's the progress report, here's that going. I think that's probably just a little bit more convenient, and keeping it very separated from the county council, what they're doing versus what we're doing would be important, I think. And so, but definitely they need to know where we're at, because it is another way to get the public involved.
Do we want that to be a standing item on the agenda every week?
Maybe every month,
Every other meeting?
every other meeting.
That's plenty, because someone's got to draft these.
Well, and I agree that it's probably be weird that we have somebody there saying what we're going to do to your government. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think that as a written progress report probably could even be in their packet. I don't know, because that's in their packet, and it's also posted what's on the agenda. So, I mean, that's just an option.
Chair recognizes Mr. Greenberg.
Well, I'm not uncomfortable with talking to someone about their funeral, what they want. Having just gone through that with my mom, I mean, she was real clear. But on the other hand,
It's a good point, Bob.
I'm not adverse to that, your suggestion either. The question in my mind is which would expose it more to the public, someone
That's
standing up and talking, or putting something in the packet. What do you think, Judy?
I'm not really uncomfortable with somebody going to the meeting and just keeping people aware of it. They don't have a choice. The government's changing on them, so they don't really have a choice. It's like visiting a prison. They've already got a date.
That's better than
They really
funeral.
have got a date, so let's just figure out. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with the chairman.
I was thinking more along their lines of being uncomfortable than our lines of
I'm
being
not really
uncomfortable.
worried about
That's why they get the big
prisoners
bucks.
have to have information.
That's true now, huh?
Do you want the individual that reports to the council to have a prepared speech? Do we want them to just give it? Because here's my thoughts. Setting an individual to go speak on behalf of essentially a group as a progress update could be problematic. Something that they might say, somebody might view it as just throwing out all the terrible ideas. So that's my thought.
Well, and I was going to suggest that it doesn't necessarily have to be the chair, that it could be any one of us, and we could rotate through that responsibility. I do feel like it does open up, if the council says, well, what does that mean? What do you think about that? I don't know that I would feel comfortable speaking on behalf of the group, although I expect to know, and so it would just simply be an information only
Just information,
item.
not a question and answer. You're not. No, it just needs to be.
Because
We
those
had a nice meeting.
opportunities,
Everybody turned out. Everybody was there.
Just one moment, Judy. Marcy.
I was just going to say, because there will be many opportunities for citizens, which includes council members as well, to come and address this entire committee.
Mr. Dabney?
Whatever it is, it needs to be a script. It needs to be something you're reading from. You're not winging it. You're not giving your spin or interpretation. Whether it's Cricket or me or Jeremy, whoever it is, you're
Black and white.
Judy, did you want to finish up your thought?
No, that's fine.
Mr. Greenberg?
I think this just goes back to the issue I raised of being an honest broker here. And I think I'd like to depend on all of us to do that. So if it were Jeremy's turn or my turn to stand up for the council and give a progress report, it'd be the same thing. We wouldn't be putting our finger on the scale because we had that opportunity.
Yes.
We'd merely be reporting what was said, and I think script's a good idea.
Do we want to have this be a standing item that people volunteer to go to the next meeting? Is that something we want to do? Because again, schedules may be problematic for somebody. If we set one person to do it, we could change. What are your thoughts to that?
I'd let you have the responsibility to delegate if you couldn't do it, frankly. I think it's a good job for the chair and a good job. If you want to rotate it, that'd be fine with all of us, I think. None of us appear to be shy about speaking.
right. We're going to meet, twice a month? We don't need to do this any more than once a month.
Agreed.
And the other thing, from my perspective, we're not hiding anything, whether it's the county council existing or anybody else. I think you standing there and giving them an update, this is where we're thinking is good for everybody, and we don't know where this is going. And like I said, if you take those 3 items away, we may be in compliance right now. Are we going to keep that? I can't tell you one way or another till we go through this process, but that's not impossible either, I guess.
Chair recognizes Marcy.
I agree that we're transparent, and I also think by having a script, it also is an information piece for anybody in the community that wants to maintain information updates.
Mr. Greenberg?
Well, I do just want to point out, it's not up to us what's a standing item on the council's agenda.
Right.
They have to
Agreed.
want us to come there and
We're willing.
brief them. So we can make that request, but we certainly can't decide here what they're going to do.
Do we have any other discussion on this, on the issue of progress report? We've talked also briefly about training, and that ties into item G. We open the discussion on item G, discussion on scheduling of training on the 4 forms of on county government and on the Open and Public Meetings Act. We've briefly touched on this idea a couple times, having someone come down to our area to receive training, us to travel to different locations to have training. How do we want to proceed on scheduling that out?
I'd like to have somebody come from the state.
Yeah.
explain to everybody at the same time.
Yeah, try and get a lot of people to that meeting.
Yeah.
That'd be
I
a
agree.
great idea.
So everybody knows what the options are.
Would we like to delegate someone the item of seeking out the individuals to do that and bringing back a report for us next time we meet? Mr. Dabney?
There was, Jeremy, you may know his name, came down here and talked to the group in Star Hall or so. Gavin something.
Anderson.
He's supposedly about the best expert in this state.
Could you remind us who he is
Gavin,
Anderson, I believe.
Anderson.
and his position?
He's a,
is?
I believe he's a district deputy attorney at Utah County. He
Yep.
wrote the book, the official county government, that UAC, Utah Association of County, puts out. But yeah, he was the one who came out and spoke to Star Hall,
He knows this stuff as well or better than anybody. And
as well as open it up.
I would just like to also request that we include an invitation to the Lieutenant Governor's office. They are the official state's election authority, and they're also expert in this, and they don't have a dog in the fight, whereas like us, Salt Lake City has a form of government they probably are committed to, and they may be a little biased. So I'd like to include, if we bring Gavin down,
I
which
think
I think is a good idea.
Is he Salt Lake or Utah County?
Or whatever county he is,
Yeah.
they've got a form of government.
Mr.
Let's
Nick?
get someone from the Lieutenant Governor's office too.
I could reach out to the LT's governor's office. So I've got a good working relationship with Spencer's office. So I'm fine with that. If you want to delegate that to me, if you guys are okay with that.
are you doing Gavin too?
I don't know Gavin.
I think
don't
Ruth
know
has
him, but-
already been in touch with Gavin, no?
No, not myself. Christina Sloan has, and for another reason, she's
I can
inviting him
talk to him. I don't know him. I just met him at that thing, but I would follow up on that if we want.
So we have essentially two, I don't know if they're considered motions at this point or just items that we're going to add to next week's agenda, that Mr. Day is going to reach out to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and Mr. Dabney is going to reach out to Mr. Anderson for purposes of providing training for this board and the public.
Are we
Judy?
gonna try to get them at the same time so we can,
That'd be good.
do a
Yeah, that'd be great.
Theoretically, that sounds nice, if we can make their schedules match
make
up.
it work.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else that we want to, at this initial stage, reach out to for training, to have them come here?
The only other person I can think of is the author of House Bill 224.
Ramble?
Which would be, well, no, I'd say
Or-
someone from the legislative office of the legal office of the legislature,
Okay.
who actually
That's-
draft the details of the bill. I don't know if that's worthwhile or not, but they're the other people who have some expertise in it, or at least what the bill was meant to say.
That did the legal review of it.
They actually usually draft it. Usually
Yeah,
a legislature says, I have this idea, I want a bill to do blah, 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 and they hand an outline to that office, and they draft.
Mr. Greenberg, would you like to undertake that, or is there someone here that would be more familiar with their legislative staff?
I don't know anybody there, but I'm happy to,
I don't-
I'll call Carl Albrecht, my former opponent, and ask for an introduction to somebody.
Or try David too. Senator Hinkins.
Yeah.
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 Is there any other discussion that would like to be had on item G? Seeing none, we'll move on to item I. We've already established that we would like to discuss bylaws at the next meeting.
Stephen, on that,
Yes.
what is our target for those guys? Is it's not this next meeting?
No, I'm assuming what will happen is the three, Mr. Dabney, Mr. Day, Mr. Greenberg, will reach out to them and obtain their schedules
Okay, give them to Ruth.
and give them to Ruth, see if we can cross-reference some of their
Okay.
schedules, and then the availability of a location for us to meet at, Star Hall, Grand Center, wherever else we can meet, and then just kind of boil down some time frames. It might not be possible for them all to come on the same day and the same time, so we might have to have a number of public hearings, but also provide public notice for the public to be able to attend the meetings to obtain the same training that we're getting.
Ruth, is that something you guys are willing to be the point, your people for?
Mr. Greenberg?
happily, I've found that in bringing people from upstate to Moab, if you invite them for Friday, they're really happy to come.
Yeah, they are.
That's right.
Yeah, I happen to know a hotel guy too, so we'll make sure they're taken care of. So we'll make it easy. We'll make it worth their time. So yeah, we'll get them down.
Do we have any other discussions on item I? These are the bylaws that we were talking about. Discussion on establishing committee bylaws if desired. We've previously stated that we wanted to reach out to Ms. Dillon regarding information on the bylaws for other boards and obtain those information templates and look at those next time. Apart from that discussion, do we have any other discussion that we'd like to have on that matter? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings, possible actions. I have none listed here. Does anybody have any idea? Any others? Seeing none, we'll move on to future considerations. The county attorney is not present. I'm assuming that we'll get an update on this sometime later.
Well, she wants to review at a future meeting, so we could put it on the next agenda if that's what you all would like, to go more into the state code, that whole chapter 4.
Seems like we'd
whether
like.
she's available on the 15th.
I'm not positive, but I think so.
She's got a big plate in front of her right now,
I think there's something she wants to do.
but I know she does. She's really interested in it.
We'll add
But
that
I don't envy her new position right now.
What's the big guy?
It's being an attorney for the county.
Oh, no.
Just with
Well,
the
also,
policy.
it
Yeah.
would be good at that point to discuss with her a little bit, us engaging outside counsel.
So we will add that item onto the agenda for next time.
That's a week.
Yeah.
Next week,
Yep.
yes. At this time, does any committee member know of any reason why we would have a closed session at this point? We would like to enter into that.
No.
Seeing none, we've reached our last item of the agenda unless Ms.
Just to make a point about closed session, and you all didn't really talk about Open and Public Meetings Act training for yourselves, but there are only very small handful of things that you can go into closed session for. This is where Open and Public Meeting training, you'd know. I mean, I'm here to
I think
help
Judy and
because-
I have
Yeah.
some experience with this.
Anyway, just a thought on that.
So should we have somebody come give us training?
Well, if I don't know that we're
We
going to go
already
into
s-
a closed session. This is supposed to be a really open process.
Exactly.
I don't know why we'd go into a closed
I
session.
don't either.
I don't either.
I think we cross that bridge when we get there.
But gee, we committed also to some open meeting training already.
Yeah.
Gavin in particular.
I thought so.
I thought maybe I missed something.
Mr. Debney?
Just a question. It would seem that we want to have that training, if it were available locally here, pretty soon. Not waiting for 3 meetings down the line or something like that. If there was, I just,
When does the state come and give it to all the new council members? Is that not happening this year?
We are trying to get a date. It's usually May or June. It's
Oh.
Fran Bitter, who is the director of the Utah Association of Special Districts. But that is the one annual time we do.
Okay. I
Last
knew
year
I've
was
done
early.
that every year, so that's why I was
Isn't it
asking.
available online, Ruth?
Actually, thank you for bringing that up. It is. There is
I
a
see
way
no
to
reason
take
why
open
Christine
and public
can't.
meeting training online, and I
It's
can get you all that information.
and Jeremy and I were
I think
just
it's
talking,
harder.
Christina might be able to give us.
Well, if it's online, let's
If
go
it's
with
online,
it.
you just go online.
Yeah,
Okay.
I took it the other day.
Yeah. it's online.
Did you take your internet one with the new email? Yeah, that was.
I would like to point out that I do pay attention. That's why I said we needed our own email because of the Open Trainings Act about not crossing
Hey,
over.
cricket.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I've attended every one for the Planning Commission. That's why I was asking her if it's soon, just because. But I thought it was May. So, but online isn't hard.
If there's a way you could send us the link that we need to go to for both those,
I'll do it again. Not a problem.
Sorry, both. So there's open and public meeting training, and what
and the other one is a security thing?
Yeah, the security email,
Yeah,
Matt.
I got the
I think
email
you got
from
an email
Oh,
from
is that
Matt
what it is?
Sinicero.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
I
Matt.
just haven't-
it?
Click on the link and yeah.
Nah.
It's about, I don't know, it's about an hour's worth of training.
Yeah, I haven't started it till I can
It's
just
a lot of
do it
videos,
without being
but
connected.
it's kind of common sense. But it had some neat stuff in it. I will say.
Okay.
if you ever have problem with phishing scams, you know what to look for.
And Walt, we will need your bank account number.
Yes. Social.
Are you fishing?
So seeing no other,
Mother's maiden name.
That's right.
seeing no other items of business, does anyone have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Before I second it, I'm looking forward to working with all you. I think it's going to be exciting and fun, and maybe not always fun, but it's going to be exciting. And I think this is a very important thing we agreed to work on. And I like what I've heard people saying. We want to hear open and nothing behind the scenes, and people will sense that very quickly. And I think that's really good. So I second it.
All in favor? Unanimous.
Hey,
Thank you.
Bob, do you
I
have
would like to add one last thing. Thank you for making it short.
Bob, do you have a
I
minute?
lined out 4 hours today.
You have a
'cause I
minute?
didn't know.
Do you have a minute from GOP to Democratic Party, real quick?
Is this a closed meeting?
No, this isn't closed. This you can hear.
No,
I just
no,
want to
no.
know kind of where Bob's folks are on some. I'd like to hear your input too on this reservation system.
I haven't read that thing yet.
Can I share one thing with you?
Terrifies me.
Sure, absolutely.
I would like to share one thing with you. If you don't think this will affect our community, let me explain what happened to us. So we have 2 ways to book our tours for Moab Cowboy. You can book it online on our website, or you can book it online through TripAdvisor. So we are constantly getting bookings. TripAdvisor, we have to pre-approve. Our site, they automatically can. I tell you this because all of a sudden, silence. Nobody checking, nobody calling us, nobody emailing us. And Kit and I are like, what the heck's going on? So we go online. I go online incognito and try to book my tour. And I can. I pick dates, I pick everything. I can book my tour. So it's not that my website's crashed, which is what I'm afraid of. So then I go on to TripAdvisor and I try to book and I can't. What's going on? Nothing. About the third week plus 3 days, I told my husband, I go, the government shut down. He goes, you don't think it's that? And I go, it's absolutely a government shutdown. He goes, why do you think? I go, people think the parks are closed. And some people don't have income. So I talked to 2 other big tour companies that, like me, that are well established. Silence. Nothing. Nobody calling, nobody booking. Silence. Just a minute. Just a minute. Silence. No calls, no inquiries, no emails, no bookings, nothing. And which we've been in business, this is our 10th season. We've had our own website for 5 years. So we know that this is not normal. So, what was 6 weeks? The night that Washington, it came on the news that the government's open, was like at 6 o'clock their time, or 9 o'clock our time, you know what I mean, 6 o'clock. Anyway, vice versa, 9 o'clock our time, whatever. And all of a sudden I told my husband, I go, well, let's see what happens tomorrow. Bookings like you can't believe. You cannot believe the bookings.
So they thought the whole Moab was
Pretty much.
Well, and I'm telling you, if you don't think it's going to affect us,
Oh, it's gonna hurt.
it's going to be devastating. Because of public perception. And people say, well, you know, they're not going to come just for the park. People are thinking they're driving all the way to Moab, Utah. They want to see arches. Even if it's for an hour. They're going to be here for 4 days. Well, if we can't see arches, let's don't go. But it's also not going to just affect Moab. It's going to affect the rest of the state because people leave here and they go to Hank